What happens when we stop building machines piece by piece and simply tell the machine what to build? Beat.
That is the big question.
Right now, in 2026, we are watching the death of drag-and-drop automation.
We really are. It is happening incredibly fast.
We are looking at a guide today. It's called The Future of Automation, Beyond N8N with Claude Code.
It paints a pretty wild picture.
It does. It points to a reality where natural language doesn't just, assist your workflows.
Right.
It completely replaces the need to manually build them.
Which is huge.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack this massive shift.
We really need to get into the weeds on this.
We are going to figure out how natural language is gutting traditional workflow building. We'll look at what this means for you, especially if you spent years learning these tools.
And how to adapt your skills without getting left behind.
Because it's an existential shift for a lot of builders out there.
Oh, absolutely. The whole landscape is just morphing under our feet.
So we need to establish the baseline first. We have to look at what actually changed in the literal interface of automation this year.
Let's do it.
For a long time, building automations meant, well, manually putting every single step together.
Yeah, you were doing the manual labor of connecting the digital plumbing.
Exactly. You were the one.
Turning the wrench.
Right, turning the wrench. If you used a visual tool like NAN, you open up this massive blank canvas.
Kind of intimidating, honestly.
Very. You picked a specific trigger from a drop-down menu. You dragged and dropped different nodes onto the screen.
Mm-hmm.
You had to manually map the JSON data fields from one application to the next.
Oh, the JSON mapping.
It was painful. Then you clicked Run. You tested every single branch. You fixed the inevitable errors.
Always so many errors.
And you repeated that loop until the workflow finally functioned. Beat. It's like stacking Lego blocks of data, piece by piece, hoping the structure holds up.
I love that analogy. That Lego analogy is spot on. And to be fair, that old method still works. No one is saying NEN is completely broken today.
No, of course not.
But it demands a tremendous amount of cognitive load from you.
It really does.
You have to juggle the high-level business logic, the specific quirks of different APIs, the exact data flow.
And all the potential failure points.
Exactly. You have to hold all of that in your head at the exact same time.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But that is the massive shift here. The literal interface of automation has totally transformed.
We went from a visual flowchart to a terminal window.
Right. With Claude Code, you're starting with the outcome first.
Yeah.
Natural language is the new user interface.
It's wild to think about.
You just explain where the data comes from, what needs to happen to it, and where the results should go.
Yeah.
Then, the agent acts as the intermediary. It handles writing the actual underlying scripts to make that happen.
It takes over the translation layer. You speak English or, whatever language you prefer.
Right.
And the agent translates your intent into the precise code required to execute the task.
But wait, I have to ask.
Sure.
If I'm just dictating the final house to the AI, what stops it from building the foundation out of cardboard?
That is a great point.
Does relying on the agent to build the how completely remove the need for human skill?
Not at all. That is a huge misconception out there.
Okay.
The skill hasn't disappeared. It just shifted up the stack. You moved from the manual setup of nodes to giving much better instructions.
Makes sense.
The AI will absolutely try to build a cardboard foundation if you aren't specific.
It will definitely try.
Your skill is now spotting weak logic, anticipating edge cases, and refining the outputs.
Because that first automated version inevitably falls short.
Almost always.
So we trade manual building for high-level system design and logic checking.
Exactly. You are the general contractor now, not the bricklayer. 2-sec silence.
And that brings us to why this shift matters more than most people realize.
It's a huge deal.
A lot of tech trends sound revolutionary, but they just fizzle out.
Like the metaverse.
Right, like the metaverse. But this one is different. The market forces behind it are incredibly aggressive.
The source notes are really staggering prediction here.
Yeah, let's hear it.
By 2027, 50% of enterprises are expected to adopt these AI-built systems.
50%. That is a massive, highly accelerated adoption rate for large companies.
Because the market demands raw speed. Businesses want faster systems.
They want drastically lower build time.
Exactly. They want less manual busy work standing between a new idea and its actual execution.
Which makes sense.
That is why Claude Code automation fits so perfectly into the enterprise puzzle. It matches where the market is already desperately heading.
The value shift here is profound. Let's trace it back a bit.
Okay.
A few years ago, the entire focus was just on chatbots.
Yeah.
We just wanted to talk to the AI.
Just typing in a prompt box.
Right. Then we move to injecting AI inside existing workflow tools.
Like putting a smart filter in the middle of a process?
Yeah. People build visual systems to summarize long content or to automatically route customer support tickets based on sentiment.
Yeah, the perceived value back then was just connecting an AI model to an existing workflow.
Exactly.
You were still building the pipes manually, but you put a smart filter in the middle.
But now the value is using AI to create the entire workflow itself.
The AI is the pipe builder.
I can imagine traditional automation builders feeling a real sense of discomfort right now.
Oh, definitely.
Maybe even a bit of existential dread.
I've heard it from a lot of them.
You spend 3 years learning all the little details and quirks of a tool like N8N.
All those specific API nodes.
And suddenly, that specific, highly paid busy work is becoming outdated.
It's a genuinely tough pill to swallow. You feel like your hard-earned knowledge is depreciating overnight.
But is it?
No, that time wasn't wasted at all. The fundamental job is just changing.
Okay.
Your professional value used to come from knowing how to manually build the machine. Now it comes from knowing which machine actually needs to be built.
That's a good way to put it.
You need to know how it should behave in the real world and how to improve it when business needs change.
But with this shift happening so fast, I have to ask,
Go for it.
is knowing N80 inside and out actually a liability now? Does it lock you into old ways of thinking?
It's not a liability to know the tool deeply, but getting stuck in that specific interface is a trap.
You have to adapt.
You absolutely have to evolve. Your job title might be the same, but your function is evolving. You are going from being a mechanic to being an architect.
A mechanic turns the wrench.
And an architect designs the flow of the entire building.
Your core value is now understanding business outcomes, not just connecting tools.
Perfectly said. You stay valuable when you deeply understand workflow logic.
Because tools change.
Tools and interfaces will always change. Systems thinking does not change.
Okay, let's pull this out of the clouds. We need to ground this high-level philosophy into something real.
Let's do it.
Let's look at a concrete, practical comparison of how these two methods actually work under the hood.
The source breaks this down really well.
It contrasts the traditional N8N step-by-step method with Claude Code's 5 steps.
This is where the rubber meets the road. In N8N, you always start with the individual workflow steps.
You drag in a webhook to act as a trigger.
You connect an HTTP request node.
You set up a specific API call, which usually means digging through documentation.
Hours of reading docs. You manually map the data fields. You add conditional filters.
And you test each and every path.
It's incredibly powerful, but it takes serious, focused time.
Contrast that with Claude Code. Here, you start entirely from the end result.
The 5 steps are very distinct.
What are they?
Step 1, you define the outcome. Step 2, you provide the data source. Step 3, you explain the process. Step 4, you designate the destination. And step 5, you test it.
Let's use the specific YouTube example from the source material. It's a classic automation use case.
It really is.
The goal is simple. You want to check a specific YouTube channel every 8 hours. You want to find any new videos, grab the transcript, summarize that transcript, and send it to your own Slack channel or email.
Pretty standard request.
If I were building that the old way, that's at least 4 or 5 complex nodes. Plus, dealing with YouTube's messy API pagination.
Which is always a headache. But in the new paradigm, step 1 is just writing that outcome out clearly in plain English.
Step 2, you add the required context. You just give the system the raw YouTube channel link.
And tell it to send the final result to your specific Slack workspace.
The clearer you are, the more robust the code it writes will be.
Then step 3 is where the heavy lifting happens. You explain the process, and Claude Code actually generates the workflow script.
It figures out how to authenticate and check for new videos.
It handles the processing of the transcript data.
But hold on, I need to push back on this magic happening in step 3.
Okay, push back.
How does the agent actually know YouTube's specific API rate limits? Or the exact endpoint to hit?
Good question.
Does it just guess based on its training data? Or does it research the documentation live?
It's a mix of both, and that is where it gets fascinating.
How so?
It relies on its massive pre-training to know standard API structures. But if it's a newer tool, or it hits an error, Claude Code can act like a terminal agent.
Really?
Yeah, it can actually execute curl commands to test endpoints live. It reads the error message and rewrites its own script to fix the authentication issue.
It essentially debugs its own initial assumptions.
Exactly.
That is wild. But what about the logic gaps?
What do you mean?
For instance, how does the agent handle edge cases, like avoiding summarizing the exact same video twice when it runs 8 hours later?
That's the real test of an AI builder right there. The agent usually figures out the initial deduplication logic on its own.
Like setting up a database.
Yeah, instead of you having to wire up a complex database node, Claude might just spin up a lightweight SQLite database right there on your local machine to log previous video IDs.
But here is the catch.
There's always a catch. The human must carefully review and test that specific logic during step 4.
You can never blindly trust that it handled the edge cases correctly.
Never.
The agent writes the deduplication logic, but you must verify it works.
Always. Agents are brilliant, but they still make bizarre mistakes.
That is exactly why step 5 is iterating and improving. You guide the system.
You look at the output and say, hey, this summary is too long, make it bullet points. Or, you missed a video, check your timestamp logic.
You iterate together.
Exactly.
We are going to pause for a quick break. When we come back, we need to talk about exactly where this new method breaks down.
Because building faster definitely means we can break things faster. Beat.
This deep dive is brought to you by Cloud Scale Solutions. Are you struggling to manage your growing data infrastructure?
CloudScale offers seamless, secure, and scalable cloud hosting tailored for modern enterprises.
Their intuitive dashboard lets you monitor performance in real time. Plus, their dedicated support team is available 24/7.
Stop worrying about server uptime. Start focusing on your business.
Visit cloudscalesolutions.com today. Learn more and secure your digital future.
And we're back.
Taking the human out of the manual building process introduces a scary variable.
It really does.
If I am just dictating the final house, what happens if the AI decides to cut corners? We need to transition to the friction points.
Claude Code automation is undeniably powerful, but the source highlights major pitfalls.
There are 4 main pitfalls that will absolutely ruin your day if you aren't careful.
The first is unclear prompts.
It is the classic garbage in, garbage out problem, just scaled up.
If your initial instructions are vague, your resulting workflow will be fragile and vague.
You have to be ruthlessly specific about the exact triggers
The exact shape of the data.
and the precise formatting of the outputs.
The second massive problem is hallucinations. We see this constantly in the broader AI space, but it's really dangerous here.
Let me define that really quick. It's AI generating false information or code that looks completely real.
Nailed it! That's exactly it, and it's insidious.
The Python script, or the API call that Claude Code generates, might look absolutely perfect to the human eye.
It uses the right syntax, the right variable names.
But it simply doesn't work when you actually run it, because the endpoint it made up doesn't exist.
That is why you must test the workflow with real, messy, real-world data.
You cannot just trust clean-looking terminal output.
The third pitfall is context drift. This happens constantly in longer building sessions.
The agent simply forgets earlier rules you established. Or it randomly changes a piece of logic that you both already fixed 10 minutes ago.
It's so annoying.
I'll make a vulnerable admission here. I still wrestle with context drift myself when the agent forgets my earlier rules.
Oh, I've been there. It happens to literally everyone.
I will spend an hour refining a script with an agent, and suddenly it forgets my earlier formatting rules and breaks the whole pipeline.
It is incredibly frustrating.
It really is.
It is a limitation of how these models work. As the conversation gets longer, the context window fills up. The AI's attention mechanism gets diluted and it starts dropping older constraints.
So let's fix.
The best way to fight it is keeping your individual tasks very small. You have to build one tiny workflow component at a time.
And if the project gets too big?
You need to stop. Ask the agent to summarize all past decisions into a text file. Then, start a fresh session with that summary as the system prompt.
That is a great tactical tip.
Thanks.
The fourth problem they outline is poor scoping. Sometimes the agent gets overly ambitious. It builds way too much complex architecture for a simple task.
Like setting up a massive database when a text file would do.
Exactly. Other times, it builds too little and misses obvious error handling. So how do we prevent the system from overcomplicating the build from the start?
It comes back to being a strict architect. You have to keep the initial tasks extremely small.
You have to set hard boundaries early in the prompt.
Explicitly tell it, keep this workflow under 50 lines of code. Or, only use these 3 specific tools.
You have to rein in its tendency to over-engineer. Build one single, verifiable workflow at a time. Keep the scope tight and set strict boundaries right from the start.
Yes, you are the director. You provide the guardrails, or the system will run off the tracks entirely. 2-sec silence.
Let's bring this all together. I know some listeners might feel a bit overwhelmed by this paradigm shift,
It's a lot to process.
but the source makes a deeply reassuring point. If you took the time to learn tools like NA and or Make over the last few years, your foundational knowledge is actually a massive superpower in this new era.
It truly is a superpower. Those traditional visual tools forced you to learn how automation actually works under the hood.
You inherently understand what a webhook trigger is.
You understand the fragility of data flow from one API to another.
You understand edge cases and why robust error handling is non-negotiable.
You know exactly how a massive system breaks when one tiny step fails.
You know that APIs frequently time out, or that JSON payloads unexpectedly change their formatting.
That experience gives you a crucial debugging mindset.
When Claude Code writes a script that fails, you aren't helpless.
Right, you know why it failed, which means you know exactly how to instruct the agent to fix it.
That knowledge transfers directly.
Exactly. And when you combine that deep debugging knowledge with the speed of an AI agent, the potential is staggering. Whoa, imagine scaling to build 100 complex pipelines in an afternoon just by guiding the system.
It's incredible to even think about.
But you can only achieve that kind of scale safely if you have that paranoid, rigorous debugging mindset built in.
The new workflow is fundamentally about thinking in systems. You spend your time reviewing the logic rather than just looking at the output.
You spend your energy testing the weird edge cases. You constantly improve the underlying structure over time.
So for the person listening right now, what is the ultimate first step a listener should take today?
First, do not skip learning the automation basics.
Right. Understand webhooks and APIs.
Then, start with one very small, low-stakes Claude Code task. Maybe automate a simple daily email.
From there, rigorously practice testing and refining your natural language instructions.
Do not try to build a massive, complex enterprise system on day one. Learn how the agent thinks first.
Master the basics, start small with AI, and practice rigorous testing.
Precisely. That is the only reliable path. That is how you move your automations from just saying it works to saying it works reliably every single time.
Let's recap the big idea we've explored today. Automation has truly grown up.
It really has.
The major shift in 2026 is moving aggressively away from knowing how to use a specific, highly visual tool.
The new era of automation is entirely about how to design a resilient system and how to clearly communicate a business outcome.
Your strategic thinking matters significantly more than the specific interface you happen to be typing into.
The interfaces are going to keep changing faster and faster. Your ability to think in abstract systems is the only thing that keeps you relevant.
So my challenge to you is this. Start thinking in outcomes rather than individual steps.
Yeah, ditch the blank canvas.
The next time you need to automate a tedious task, do not jump straight into a visual tool and start connecting nodes.
Sit back and write down exactly what you want to achieve first, in plain text. Beat.
But this also leaves us with a much deeper question to consider as we watch this technology accelerate.
Always more questions.
If natural language allows us to build incredibly complex systems instantly today, what happens when these agents stop waiting for our prompts?
That's a slightly terrifying thought.
What happens to the architect when the machine starts proactively suggesting and building its own workflow optimizations before we even realize a process is broken?
That is the next frontier, and it's coming faster than we think.
Keep questioning the process. Talk soon.